Good afternoon. Welcome to Kenya News Update today. I'm your host, and we're beginning with a story that reveals both progress and persistent challenges in one of Kenya's most complex security landscapes. Over the past 72 hours, the National Police Service announced the recovery of 4 illegal firearms in Baringo County. On the surface, this is a clear win for the government's ongoing disarmament campaign. But a deeper look reveals a tangled web of historical grievances, economic desperation, and a security puzzle that 4 recovered weapons barely begin to solve. This is a 12-minute deep dive into what those 4 guns really mean. We'll examine the immediate operation, the decades-long context of banditry in the North Rift, the economic drivers of violence, and the critical debate over whether disarmament alone can ever bring lasting peace. We're bringing you multiple perspectives, from security analysts to community leaders to residents living in the shadow of this conflict. Let's begin with the operation itself. According to the NPS statement, officers carried out coordinated recoveries at multiple locations across Baringo County. The operations were described as part of sustained efforts to curb banditry and restore stability. The 4 firearms, their specific types not disclosed, were seized without any reported exchange of fire or arrests. This suggests intelligence-led operations, possibly following tips or surveillance. Security analyst and former police commander Dr. Miriam Wanjiku joins us. Dr. Wanjiku, 4 guns in a vast county like Baringo. Is this a significant dent? Dr. Wanjiku, it's a symbolic victory, but we must be realistic. Baringo County, particularly the banditry-prone regions of Tiati, Baringo North, and Baringo South, has been awash with small arms for generations. Estimates from various NGOs and research institutions, though difficult to verify precisely, suggest there could be thousands of illicit weapons in circulation across the entire North Rift region. Recovering 4 is a positive step in a very long journey. It shows the security apparatus is active and can achieve results. However, the real test is whether this recovery disrupts any specific criminal network or prevents imminent attacks. Often, these weapons are the older, less reliable ones, while the more sophisticated arsenals remain hidden. So the seizure itself might be tactical, but the strategic impact is minimal without follow-up. Dr. Wanjiku precisely. The value is in the intelligence gathered during the seizure. Who owned it? Where did it come from? How was it being used? That data is more valuable than the physical weapon, but publicizing the number 4 serves a purpose. It demonstrates action to the public and to political masters. Now, to understand why 4 guns matter, we need to understand Baringo itself. Let's look at the geography and the fault lines. Baringo County is part of Kenya's North Rift Valley. It's characterized by rugged terrain, semi-arid landscapes, and borders several other counties embroiled in similar conflicts: Turkana to the northwest, West Pokot to the west, and Samburu to the east. Its population is a mix of communities, primarily the Tugen, who are largely agricultural, and the Pokot, who are predominantly pastoralist. This agricultural-pastoralist divide is the classic volatile fault line. Competition for scarce resources, water and pasture, has been the historical tinder. But in recent decades, that competition has been weaponized, literally. The proliferation of small arms, often filtering in from regional conflicts in South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Somalia, has transformed cattle rustling, a cultural practice with complex rules, into deadly militarized banditry. The weapons enable raids on a larger scale, with higher casualties and fuel cycles of revenge attacks. This brings us to the disarmament campaign. It's not new. The government has launched numerous disarmament exercises over the past 20 years, with varying degrees of success and controversy. The current operation falls under the broader Operation Malaza Uhalifu in the North Rift, which involves a multi-agency team of police and military. The stated goal is total disarmament, but this approach is fiercely debated. We have with us John Lockador, a peace-building activist from Marigat, Baringo. John, from the community perspective, what is the primary criticism of these forced disarmament campaigns? John Lokidor, thank you. The criticism is fundamental. It treats the symptom, not the disease. You take a gun from a young man in TRT. Why does he have it? He will tell you to protect his family's only wealth, his livestock, from raiders who also have guns. To graze his animals in contested areas. Because the police post is 50 kilometers away and takes hours to respond. You disarm him without providing alternative security, and you have made him and his family vulnerable. He will find another gun. The process also feels one-sided. Communities often allege that disarmament targets specific groups while leaving others armed, creating a security imbalance. This breeds resentment and distrust, making voluntary surrender impossible. True disarmament must be part of a holistic package: security, development, and dialogue. Host, that's a powerful point. Security without trust is impossible. But the government argues that you cannot have dialogue or development while armed gangs terrorize populations. It's a classic security first versus development first debate. Let's look at some numbers to frame the scale of the challenge. While we lack definitive data on weapon counts, we can look at the human cost. According to data compiled by the National Crime Research Center and local peace monitors over the past 5 years, banditry-related violence in Baringo and neighboring counties has resulted in significant casualties and displacement. For perspective, let's visualize a key metric. In Baringo County alone, over the last 5 years, banditry and resource conflicts have directly led to the deaths of over 200 civilians and more than 25 security officers. Furthermore, these clashes have internally displaced approximately 15,000 people who now live in camps or with host communities, unable to access their farms or grazing lands. The economic cost is staggering, with losses in livestock, the primary livelihood, estimated in the hundreds of millions of shillings annually. These are not just statistics, they represent shattered lives and a stunted local economy. This brings us to a critical and tragic juxtaposition. On the same day, the NPS celebrated recovering 4 firearms. Another story emerged from Baringo's capital. Detectives launched an investigation into the murder of an unidentified man in Kabarnet town. His body was found just meters from the governor's and county assembly offices. The Baringo Central Sub-County DCIO, Peter Ramogi, confirmed the incident is under investigation. Now, at this point, there is no evidence linking this murder to banditry or the disarmament campaign. It could be an unrelated crime, but its symbolic weight is heavy. Kabarnet is the administrative heart of the county, supposed to be an oasis of government control and safety. A murder in such a prominent location underscores a pervasive sense of lawlessness that extends beyond the remote grazing fields. It tells residents that insecurity is not confined to the borders. It can reach the very center of power. This incident forces us to ask, is the security strategy working where it matters most, in creating a general sense of safety for all citizens? To explore the economic drivers, we need to zoom out. Baringo is classified as an arid and semi-arid land. Poverty levels are high, and economic opportunities are few. For pastoralist youth, livestock is everything: its savings, social status, and a bride price. Climate change has intensified droughts, shrinking available pasture. When your entire economic system and social identity are tied to herds that are dying, the incentive to raid a neighbor's herd or to acquire a gun to defend your own becomes a matter of survival, not just criminality. Development expert Dr. Aisha Fadhil explains, Dr. Fadhil, the equation is simple but devastating. No water plus no pasture equals desperate herders. Desperate herders plus readily available guns equals armed bandits. You can deploy all the police and army you want, but if you don't change that first part of the equation, you are merely containing a pressure cooker. Sustainable solutions require massive investment in water pans, boreholes, and pasture regeneration projects. It requires creating alternative value chains, like certified livestock markets, meat processing, and leather industries, so that a cow's value isn't just in owning it, but in selling its products profitably. It requires education and vocational training for the youth, so they see a future beyond the herd. Until then, a gun represents economic agency in a failed economic environment. Host, so the gun is a tool for a failed economy. That's a profound insight. This connects to a wider, more disturbing trend across the continent, where state failure to provide basic services, from economic opportunity to healthcare, leaves citizens dangerously vulnerable. A poignant example comes from a different context in Nigeria, reported by The Guardian Africa. It's about the death of a young singer, Ifunanya Enwanjin, from a snake bite. She died in an Abuja hospital after a frantic, failed search for antivenom. Her death sparked national outrage, highlighting a systemic failure, the lack of essential life-saving medical supplies. While not directly about guns, the parallel is striking. When the state cannot provide basic security against wildlife or basic health care, people are forced to fend for themselves. In Nigeria, it might mean not having antivenom. In Baringo, it means acquiring a gun for protection. Both are symptoms of the state's limited reach and capacity. The social contract is frayed. Now, let's consider the political dimension. Baringo's security issues are not happening in a political vacuum. The county has influential political figures. The current disarmament campaign operates under the national government led by President William Ruto, who himself hails from the Rift Valley. This creates both an opportunity and a challenge. There is an expectation that a president from the region would understand its complexities and solve its problems. But it also raises the stakes and the potential for accusations of favoritism or bias in security operations. Local politics, including county government leadership and inter-community alliances, also play a role in either fueling or calming tensions. The upcoming election cycles often see a spike in violence, as political actors mobilize ethnic blocs and sometimes armed groups. So, where do we go from here? The recovery of 4 guns is a data point. The murder in Kabarnet is another. How do we build a future where both become anomalies? We return to our guests for final thoughts. Dr. Wanji-ku, from a security tactical standpoint, what should follow the seizure? Dr. Wanji-ku, intelligence, intelligence, intelligence. These recoveries must be exploited fully. Trace the weapons. Interrogate the networks. Use this to map the supply chains and financiers. Secondly, the security presence must be permanent and community-focused, not just a raiding force. Establish more police posts, but staff them with officers trained in community policing who build relationships. Finally, targeted operations against known bandit leaders are more effective than generalized disarmament that often harasses ordinary herders. Host, John Lockador from the ground, what is the one message you have for policymakers? John Lokidor, include us. You cannot design peace for us without us. Bring all community elders, women, and youth to the table, not for a one-day workshop, but for sustained, honest dialogue about sharing resources. Support our local peace committees, who know the triggers and the personalities. And please invest in our land. Build that dam in Capito. Create that irrigation scheme in Ngiambo. A young man with a thriving farm or a skilled trade does not need a gun to feel like a man. Host and Dr. Fadhil, the economic imperative. Dr. Fadhil, treat the North Rift as a region requiring a special economic zone with tax incentives for investors in agriculture, renewable energy, and tourism. The government and private sector must de-risk investment there. Climate-smart agriculture and pastoralism is not an NGO project. It should be a national priority with serious budget allocation. Peace will be a byproduct of shared prosperity. Host, thank you all. The story of Baringo is the story of modern Kenya's most difficult test, integrating marginalized regions into the national fabric through AQT, not just force. The 4 recovered firearms are a footnote in a much longer chapter. They represent a government trying to assert monopoly over violence. The murder in Kabarnet represents the pervasive fear that monopoly is not yet complete. And the silent, desperate herder represents the human reality at the heart of it all, for whom a gun is a rational, if tragic, choice in the absence of other options. The path forward is clear but arduous, simultaneous, sincere investment in security, development, and political inclusion. Until that happens, operations will recover guns, 1, 4, or 10 at a time, while the root causes continue to manufacture desperation. For Kenya News Update today, this has been a deep dive into the meaning behind the headlines. We'll continue to follow this story. Subscribe to Kenya News Update today for more in-depth reporting.